In my previous life, I was vain and abandoned, and my elder brother who worked on a construction site to support me through college. I turned around and clung to the wealthy and overbearing second-generation rich guy. After the second-generation rich guy got me pregnant, his fiancée threw me into the sea as if I were garbage. When my elder brother heard the news, his hair turned white overnight. After avenging me with his own hands, he committed suicide by jumping into the sea. A rising business star, burdened with the infamy of committing suicide to avoid punishment, thus fell. Only then did I realize that he loved me as much as his own life. When I opened my eyes again, I had returned to the day when I broke up with him in the rental house. When I sat on that narrow bed in the rental house again, I realized that I had been reborn. Leo came back from outside, sweating profusely, and there was still cement from the construction site on his pants. When he saw me, he was stunned for a moment. And then his joy was clearly visible. Before I could say anything, he consciously took out a stack of red banknotes from his pocket and handed them to me. After all, I only had one purpose every time I came to see him, to ask for money. Take it and buy some new clothes. It was a full 5,000 yuan. His monthly salary. He didn't keep a single cent for himself. He clearly knew that I would use the money to buy some flashy but useless luxury goods to satisfy my vanity. Yet he never blamed me. His own short-sleeved shirt was washed until it turned white and the fabric was frayed, but he still didn't want to buy a new one. However, he was willing to let me squander the money. Tears blurred my vision, and my heart ached and burned. In the same scene in my previous life, I wasn't satisfied with the money he had earned with his blood and sweat. And I even disliked that he didn't earn enough. Overwhelmed by greed, I told Leo the news that I had been spotted by a talent agency. He said it was a scam and told me not to be impulsive. But I mistakenly thought that he couldn't stand to see me do well and hurt him with vicious words. I cut off all ties with him. Since then, my tragic life began. I was deceived by the talent agency to accompany clients for drinking, was toyed with by the second-generation rich guy and got pregnant. In the end, I was brutally killed by the second-generation rich guy's fiancée and thrown into the sea. The scenes from my previous life played like a carousel in front of my eyes. It was only when Leo raised his hand to wipe my tears that I came back to my senses. His slender fingers, which should have been holding a pen, were now covered with scars and calluses. It made people feel inexplicably can be translated as heartache or sympathy just looking at them. Gina, why are you crying? He gently lowered his head and asked me. In the face of his concern, my tears flowed even more profusely. To hide my emotions, I pretended to be angry. It's all because of your clothes. The fuzz from your frayed vest flew into my eyes. You should go buy a new one tomorrow. And your shoes are so worn out that they make me want to cry. Leo smiled and touched my head, and then blew on my eyes. Sorry. I'll buy a new one tomorrow. Sis. Suddenly he seemed to realize something, and he restrained his smile and quietly put down his hand. He must have thought of what I had said before. I used to always dislike that he worked on the construction site, saying that he was dirty and not allowing him to get close to me. I really wanted to slap myself for what I had done back then. I grabbed his hand and placed it on my face. Don't you love me anymore, brother? Leo was taken aback. I hadn't called him brother for a long time. There was a glimmer of light in his concerned eyes. I do. You're my precious little sister. And I love you the most. Actually, Leo and I don't have any blood relationship. When I was 5 years old, my grandmother picked up the dying Leo while gathering herbs in the mountains. I had never seen such a good-looking child in the countryside. He was as delicate as if carved from jade, and even his clothes were in a style I had never seen before. He was wearing a pure gold longevity lock with the character Leo engraved on it. I liked him so much that as soon as he opened his eyes, I called him brother. At the age of 7, he lost his memory. My grandmother took pity on him and took him in, giving him food to eat. The other children were all envious that I had such a good-looking brother and all recognized him as their brother. I was jealous and bad-tempered, so I was angry and stopped talking to him. Leo knew how bossy and willful I was, so he stopped talking to the other children and obediently followed me as my little attendant. He stroked my head and said, Gina. I'm your brother and only yours. I'll be your brother for life. And I'll love you for a lifetime. He followed me like this for more than 10 years. He didn't have to be this tired. Until a car accident changed everything. My parents took my grandmother to the county town to see a doctor. But they were hit by a large truck and fell off the viaduct. Overnight, I lost all my relatives. Only Leo and I were left in the world. Relying on each other. Leo held me in his arms until I fainted from crying and comforted me. Don't be afraid. I'm here. The truck driver's family was so poor that they couldn't afford any compensation. So Leo resolutely dropped out of school to support my studies, and took on the heavy burden of the family. He was the top student in the whole school. And all the teachers had high hopes for him. While I had mediocre grades. And it was actually me who should have dropped out of school the most. But he couldn't bear to let me suffer even a little bit. To be exposed to the wind and rain. Even though I got into such a bad school. He said it didn't matter and silently earned money to pay my tuition fees. In my previous life, I really disliked him. But I also really felt sorry for him. I hated myself for being a burden to him. I didn't want him to waste his time on the construction site. Getting up early and going to bed late to earn hard-earned money. And being bent over by the pressure of life. He deserved a bright future. So I credulously listened and to the bad advice and, in order to take a shortcut to make a lot of money, I went astray and broke his heart. I owe him so much. It was getting dark. And Leo was going to send me back to school. I wanted to stay with him a little longer. But he stopped me. He said the conditions in the rental house were poor and insisted on sending me off. Just as I was about to find another excuse. Suddenly the wind blew violently outside and it started to rain heavily. I sat on the bed and spread my hands helplessly. Brother. There's no way. I can't leave now. Leo pursed his lips. Then you stay here. And I'll go and squeeze in with my fellow workers. As he said that, he was about to leave. I grabbed his arm. Brother. Don't go. I'm scared. The thunder was rumbling outside. And I deliberately pretended to be scared and shrank into his arms. He stiffened all over. Unable to resist my persistent coaxing. Leo had to stay and keep me company. The rental house was very small. But Leo had kept it very clean. If it weren't for me, he would definitely choose to share the rent with his fellow workers to save money. There was only a very small bed in the rental house. Leo chose to sleep on the floor. I touched the bed and said coquettously, "How can anyone sleep on such a hard bed?" Leo was a bit at a loss and was about to go out in the rain to buy a mattress. I grabbed him. The rain is so heavy. The mattress will get wet when you bring it back. And I'm sleepy now and want to go to bed. Leo frowned. Then what should we do? How about this? Brother? You sleep on the bed. And I'll lie on you and use you as a human mattress. What do you think? I blinked my big eyes and said innocently. The tips of Leo's ears turned red. And he refused firmly. No way. Then I won't sleep. I'll just be so sleepy. I'll definitely doze off in class tomorrow. Then I'll be made to stand by the teacher. I'm also prone to low blood sugar. If I faint and hit my head on the ground and bleed all over the place, no one will care about me. Woo woo woo. My life is so hard. I pouted my lips, pretending to be pitiful while observing him. As soon as Leo heard that I might get hurt, his heart softened completely. And he covered my mouth to stop my nonsense. Stop talking. I promise you. Yes. Leo blushed as he made the bed for me. After that, he went into the shower room to take a shower. As soon as he took off his upper clothes, I opened the door of the shower room. The once thin boy now had a broad and strong back, which could hold up a piece of sky for me and allow me to play carefree. Looking at his broad shoulders, narrow waist, and 8-pack abs, my face burned with embarrassment. I should have come in a little later. He hadn't taken off his pants yet. Leo quickly put on his clothes, looking at me as if I were a thief, with a cold expression. What are you doing in here? I pretended to be calm. I came to scrub your back. You work on the construction site all day, so there must be a lot of dirt on your back. What if you dirty my little rabbit bedspread? I said brazenly. I can scrub myself. Get out. I'm not can be translated as at ease or assured. It's better if I scrub you. As I said that, I lifted his clothes and was about to start. He grabbed my hand and pressed it against the wall. And said sternly, "Gina." There was a fire burning in Leo's eyes. "Woo woo woo. Brother. You're scolding me. I had good intentions." Every time I cried, he couldn't stand it. No matter what, he would take the blame on himself. Leo hugged me in his arms and stroked my head. "Don't cry. It's my fault. I shouldn't have been harsh on you." Out of anger, I bit hard on the place where his nipple was protruding. Leo sucked in a breath of cold air. "Do you act like this with other men too?" he said with cold eyes. I hated that he was so dense and pinched his waist angrily. "I don't care about other people. I only act like this with you." The coldness in Leo's eyes melted away. And he pinched my face. "Now that you're not angry anymore, go out quickly." Before I could struggle further, I was pushed out by Leo. At night, I lay on Leo's chest, sulking. I had thought that I could touch his muscles and take advantage of him. But he wrapped himself up like a dumpling. If I hadn't stopped him in time, he would have taken out his turtleneck sweater from winter and put it on. Is he so afraid of me? Am I such a lustful person? If he won't let me touch, I will. While he was asleep, I reached my mischievous hand towards the hem of his clothes. Before I could touch anything, he caught me in the act. Leo gritted his teeth and said, "Do you really think I won't hit you?" As he said that, he slapped my butt. He worked on the construction site, so his hands were strong. Even though he held back his strength, it still hurt a bit. "If you don't go to sleep, then don't sleep at all." Although Leo indulged me in everything, it didn't mean he didn't have a temper. I was still a bit scared when he got angry. I was just about to use my crying trick, but he saw through it. He covered my mouth and pressed me tightly against his chest. He held me tightly, and I couldn't move at all. Gradually, I heard his deep breathing as he fell asleep. I slightly raised my head and looked at his handsome profile, and then planted a kiss on his chin. I said sweetly, "Good night, brother. Have a nice dream." Soon, whatever low sigh, I fell asleep, lulled by the faint fragrance of Chinese honey locust pod on his body. At this moment, Leo opened his eyes, and an unknown emotion churned in his long and bright eyes. Early the next morning, Leo dragged me out of bed to attend the Ada class. I was so sleepy that I could hardly open my eyes. I slumped on the bed while Leo dressed me and washed my face. "Eat more when you're at school. You're already so thin. Remember to apply sunscreen and be careful of sunburn. Drink more water and less milk tea. If you don't have enough money, call me." He babbled on for a while, giving me instructions just like a worried father sending his daughter to kindergarten. Knowing that I was prone to low blood sugar, he grabbed a handful of candies and chocolates and stuffed them into my pocket. He bought me breakfast and sent me to school. Before he left, I secretly put the 5 yuan he gave me the day before under his pillow. On my way back to the dormitory after class, I received a phone call. "Gina, what have you decided? Do you want to sign a contract with us?" Some time ago, my roommate casually took a photo of me turning my head and posted it online. And it went viral. Netizens called me the first love girl. At this time, an agency company extended an olive branch to me. They promised to package me and help me enter the entertainment industry. They painted a rosy picture for me, saying that I would act in movies and could earn 2.8 million yuan a day in the future. In my previous life, I was blinded by these false promises. Despite Leo's dissuasion, I foolishly signed a 10-year contract that was like a contract of sale of my personal services. Later, I was taken by the company to various drinking parties to accompany guests, and I was molested by old men. This time, I won't make the same mistake again. I rejected the invitation from the agency company and turned to do self-media work instead. With the boost from the previous popularity and the experience accumulated in my previous life, I gained more than 100 followers in just 1 month. I want to learn how to make money because I don't want Leo to be so tired anymore. I'm becoming more and more dependent on Leo and want to be with him. I started to go to his rented room frequently, coming whenever I didn't have classes. At first, he would stop me. But later he had no trace and gradually got used to my cheekiness. I filled the rented room, which had traces of our 2 lives together, with all kinds of things. I told him that I had earned money myself and that he didn't need to work on the construction site. But he still got up early and worked late, doing the job of carrying bricks. He said that he was my last resort and my way out, and that he wanted to save money to give me the best of everything. My heart felt as if it was soaked in a honey pot, so sweet that my eyes ached. One day, I was doing a live stream in Leo's rented room. He suddenly came back wearing a camouflage uniform and a safety helmet. The sun outside was scorching. As soon as he entered the cool room, he took off his shirt because of the heat. He didn't notice at all that I was back. Leo's perfect figure, which looked thin when dressed and muscular when undressed, caused a great stir as soon as it appeared on the screen. The bullet comments were all asking who he was. Damn, an aficionado, sorry. Look at those pecs and abs. I'm drooling. He must have just come back from the construction site. With this figure and face, it's like rough guy literature coming to life. Please, act in a couple of episodes with me. Brother, the water pipe in my house is broken. Can you come and fix it for me? Seeing that the bullet comments were getting more and more outrageous, I quickly rushed in front of Leo and asked him to put on his clothes. I stood on tiptoe and whispered in his ear, "Brother, I'm doing a live stream." The bullet comments kept scrolling. What? Who is this? Didn't the blogger say she doesn't have a boyfriend? Why are they so intimate? The blogger can't be a love-struck person. Can she? Why is she getting involved with a guy who carries bricks on the construction site? Sister, could it be that you're being used as a money-making tool? I pulled Leo in front of the camera. As soon as Leo saw the messages, he immediately shook off my hand. Before he could think of what to say, I introduced him without any hesitation. Thank you all for your concern. I'm not being deceived. This is my brother. He is the most amazing person in the whole world, and also the one who treats me the best. Yes, why? My brother is very great. He carries bricks on the construction site to support me through college. Leo was stunned. He didn't expect that I would openly admit my relationship with him. And I even praised him in such a way. After all, he had come to school to find me once before. At that time, he was dressed shabbily and stood at the school gate, pulling me and stuffing money into my hands. As a result, the people in my class found out and spread rumors. Since I had already lost both my parents, I was slandered as someone who earned my living expenses by sleeping with construction workers. No one listened to my explanation. At that time, I had a strong sense of self-esteem. I took out my anger on Leo. I told him not to look for me again and not to admit our relationship in front of others. Looking back now, I was really stupid. I stabbed the person closest to me with a knife. Leo nodded towards the camera and confirmed what I said. In the comment section, seeing that Leo was good-looking, many people left messages asking if he had a girlfriend and saying that they wanted to be my sister-in-law. I smiled and said, "My brother doesn't have a girlfriend. But I like him. You don't have a chance anymore." Upon hearing this, Leo froze for a moment and walked out of the room with an awkward gait. The comment section said that I was making an inappropriate joke about ethics. I explained to the netizens the relationship between us as stepbrother and stepsister. Seeing that I was sweating from the heat, Leo took out a fan and fanned me. Because I came often, he specially bought an electric fan for me. Usually, he was afraid of wasting electricity and was reluctant to turn it on at all. I was so thirsty after the live stream. Leo held half a watermelon and fed me the sweetest part of the watermelon, the heart. He patiently fed me bite by bite. When I needed to spit out the seeds, he instinctively put his hand under my chin to catch them. Netizens exclaimed that he was so attentive and sweet, and they were really into our relationship. When I was a child, he lied to me that if I swallowed a watermelon seed, a big watermelon would grow in my stomach and burst it. I was so scared that I cried and didn't even dare to sleep. He comforted me for a long time. And since then, I have to spit out the seeds cleanly when eating watermelon. And he always gives me the sweetest piece of watermelon. During the meal, I suggested to Leo that we pretend to be a couple. We could be couple bloggers. shoot our daily life as a couple. And it would bring in a lot more traffic. And we wouldn't earn less money either. Leo flatly refused. I held his arm and said, "Brother, please." Leo just wouldn't agree no matter what. In my previous life, he never said that he liked me. But his heart and eyes were full of me. And he gave me everything he had. It was only when he confessed by the seaside before jumping into the sea that I knew this fool had liked me since a long time ago. He said that he felt like he had accomplished nothing and was afraid of delaying me. So he had never dared to express his love. Now that he was just a bricklayer, he buried his love even deeper in his heart and didn't dare to cross the line at all. I put down the ball and said in desperation, "But can you afford the things I want? I also want to study abroad. Do you know how much that will cost? How much money can you earn by carrying bricks? It's not even enough for me to spend in one day." I didn't hold back from stabbing at his heart with the most vicious words. After I said that, Leo fell silent. Seeing his frustrated expression, my heart ached as if stabbed by needles. But I had no other choice. I knew that Leo's weakness was me. He wanted to give me the best life. Even if it meant selling everything he had. Or even selling his blood or donating his kidney. But I didn't want him to ruin his health. Saying that I wanted to study abroad was just an excuse I casually made up. I wanted to earn more money for him to start a business. So that he wouldn't have to grovel to others anymore. In my previous life, in order to get investment for his business, he drank so much that he had a stomach hemorrhage. He worked continuously for several days without sleeping, just to get me out of my contract. I wasn't unaware of the books he placed in the corner. He often got up in the middle of the night to study. Even though he was in a difficult situation, he never gave up on studying. He has always been a self-disciplined and motivated person. Such a shining person should be able to show his capabilities in the business world, instead of wasting his time on the construction site. Leo agreed to my request. Leo would appear in my camera from time to time. Our moderate intimacy made the netizens very excited. The popularity was high. And I also received a few advertisements and made a small profit. After class one day, a boy suddenly rushed out and blocked my way. "I really thought you were the so-called first love girl on the internet. It turns out you're just a slut who likes to get involved with lowlifes. No wonder you rejected my confession. So you like migrant workers. How much did he give you? I'll give you double if you spend one night with me." He smeared me without any basis. Pedestrians on the road all cast curious glances at me. Some people who knew me even raised their phones to record the scene. I was so angry when I heard this. It's okay to scold me. But he can't insult Leo. Then I suddenly remembered that someone had sent me a private message to confess their love a few days ago. "Beauty, beauty. I think you're really my type. Do you want to be in a relationship with me?" Then he sent me a few greasy photos. When I saw the photos, I even thought that someone was bullying me and deliberately using a classmate's photo to play a prank. I rejected him immediately. Unexpectedly, the person on the other side became even more aggressive. "What are you pretending for? I just said a few nice words about you. And you really believed it. You're so full of yourself. Stop pretending. I originally just wanted to test you. But I didn't expect you to be this kind of person. Do you think you're Life? Everyone wants to be in a relationship with you. It's so funny. I wouldn't even look at someone like you even if you threw yourself at me." At that time, I had the same expression as the old man on the subway looking at his phone. I quickly blocked him. I couldn't help but sigh. The world is really like a huge express delivery station. No wonder I always meet all kinds of people. Some good and some bad. And some really strange ones. So he was that overly confident and easily offended guy. I picked up the water bottle in my hand and threw it at his face. "Watch your mouth. If you don't have a mirror, you at least have your urine. You don't even know what kind of person you are. And you still have the nerve to look down on others. So what if my boyfriend is a migrant worker? As long as I like him, he earns his money honestly with his own hands. You're such a jerk that you're not even worthy of holding his shoes. Besides, if you go back 3 generations, who wasn't a farmer? You're even scolding your own grandfather. You're really a despicable person." He blushed with embarrassment at my words and immediately got angry and prepared to hit me. Before his slap landed on me, I fell to the ground. I immediately pretended that he had punched me. And I was going to extort 38,000 yuan from him. My roommate immediately called the police upon seeing this. And the classmates who passed by all became my witnesses. The video was posted online. And I became popular again. My followers soared. Everyone praised me for giving him a good scolding and said that I was the nemesis of overly confident men. Leo rushed over in a hurry. He pulled me and looked at me from top to bottom, left and right, for fear of missing any part. I hugged him with tears in my eyes. Brother. It hurts so much. And I'm so scared. Don't be afraid. Your brother is here. He held me in his arms and comforted me. I raised my hand to show him the abrasion on my arm. It was as big as a fingernail. He did it. He wanted to beat me to death. My remarks, which were as false as those of a green tea girl, made the self-assured man stare at me in surprise. I said, don't go too far. If you keep talking, the wound will heal soon. What? Are you not convinced? Do you really want to beat me to death? I shouted at him defiantly, relying on Leo's presence. Leo warned him with a look as if he were looking at a dead person. The police officer slapped the back of his head, and he didn't dare to say a word. If the police officer hadn't stopped Leo in time, Leo would have broken his arm. He was left for education. When I left, he even threatened me, saying that his cousin would teach me a lesson. As a result, the police officer gave him 2 raps on the head, shouting, still shouting, "Who are you going to deal with?" It hurt so much that he grimaced and covered his head. Woo woo, woo. I won't shout anymore. I won't shout anymore. Leo treated my wound and sent me back to the dormitory. My roommate said worriedly that I might have really gotten into trouble. Do you know who Ethan's cousin is? I shook my head unfairly. It's Finn from the neighboring school. But now we should call him Finn. Some time ago, he was just recognized back by the renowned Leo family in Jing City. Now he's the famous young master of the Leo family. When the time comes, if Ethan says a few words in front of his cousin, how can you still stay in Jing City? My roommate sighed. My mind went blank with a bang. I was so shocked by the name Finn that I staggered and barely managed to stand up by holding onto the table. In my previous life, it was because of him that I ended up with no body left. My roommate kept talking to herself. Why does this Finn have such a good life? By relying on a longevity lock engraved with the character Lu, he has turned into a young master of the Leo family. Why don't I have such good luck? My roommate almost slapped her thigh. When I heard her mention the longevity lock engraved with the character Lu, I was suddenly stunned. You mean he became the young master of the Leo family by longevity lock? My roommate was taken aback when she saw my startled expression and said, yes, hadn't fulfilled my obsession. That's right. Ethan said it himself. What's wrong? Nothing. I touched the longevity lock hanging on my chest and sat down on the chair in a daze. It turned out that Leo was the lost child of the Leo family. When I was a child, I praised Leo's longevity lock for being beautiful, and he took it off and gave it to me. He said that what was his was mine, and what was mine was still mine. Everything of his belonged to me, including himself. So I have been wearing it for more than 10 years. In my previous life, when I resolutely broke up with him, I returned the longevity lock to him, in order to make me change my mind. He sold the longevity lock for money, but still couldn't wait for me to come back. By some twist of fate, the longevity lock fell into Finn's hands. By relying on this token, he became the noble young master of the Leo family. Knowing everything, he also instigated me to get Leo's hair. This further confirmed his identity. Finn hadn't fulfilled Sai. This thief stole Leo's life for 2 lifetimes. Now the longevity lock is still in my hand, but Finn has already returned to the Leo family. There is only one possibility. Finn has also been reborn. With Finn's personality, if he knows the truth, he will definitely take decisive measures to eliminate all potential threats. He will definitely take action against Leo. After figuring this out, I rushed back to the rental house to find Leo without delay. However, Leo was nowhere to be seen in the rental house. Suddenly, a message popped up on my phone. Brother has something to deal with. I won't be home for a few days. Take care of yourself. Leo has always been working on the construction site. There's no reason for him to be away for a long time. This is just an excuse. My eyelid kept twitching. And I had a vague feeling that something bad was going to happen. When I went to the construction site, I learned that Leo had been injured and sent to the hospital. Sitting in the taxi, my hands were shaking with fear. When I arrived at the hospital, Leo had already been transferred to a general ward. He was very surprised to see me. He had originally wanted to hide it from me and not make me worry. But he didn't expect that I would go to the construction site to find him. I pounced on his hospital bed and cried so hard that I could barely speak. "Brother. Are you okay? Brother?" He raised his hand to wipe my tears and said weakly. "Be good. Don't cry. Your brother is okay." Brother. It must hurt a lot. Right? There were bandage marks on his arm, leg and head. He smiled calmly and said, "It won't hurt if Gina blows on it." When I was a child, he was sharpening a pencil for me. He cut his hand with the knife. Seeing the blood that wouldn't stop, my tears couldn't stop flowing. I thought that bleeding meant death and separation. Because my grandfather disappeared after bleeding a lot. He had no choice but to fool me with this method. Gina is a fairy with magic. If you blow on brother, the pain will go away. I hugged his neck and cried so hard that I couldn't catch my breath. "You still think I'm that silly kid from back then?" Leo pinched the back of my neck and stroked my back to help me catch my breath. "You will always be a child in your brother's eyes." Leo's arm was broken. His leg was fractured. And his face was scratched. If Leo hadn't been quick-witted and dodged in time, he would have already become a cold corpse. Hearing this, I felt a wave of fear. And cold sweat wet my back. Coincidentally, Leo was standing in a blind spot of the surveillance camera and had no idea who threw the stone from upstairs. Everyone said that this might just be an accident. But I knew that this was a premeditated murder. I stroked Leo's face gently with a hoarse voice. "Brother. Don't work on the construction site anymore. Okay? I have money, and I don't need you to pay my tuition fees." "Okay." Leo quit his job on the construction site and devoted himself to starting a business. I was about to speak while touching the longevity lock when I suddenly received a strange message. "If you dare to say one more word, I promise to make Leo die without a place to be buried." My face turned completely pale. I couldn't say the words that were on the tip of my tongue. Leo noticed my abnormality and asked with concern, "What's wrong? You look so pale." I shook my head and pretended to be relaxed. "Nothing. I'm just a bit hungry. I'll go downstairs to buy some food." I left the ward as if running away. As I walked, I kept looking at my phone, reading that text message over and over again. I became more and more panicked. Suddenly, a dark figure emerged from behind. I was covered by someone's hand and dragged into an alley. I desperately scratched the hand covering my mouth, and his hand was full of bloodstains from my scratching. "Let me go." The night was as dark as ink. And Finn's face was particularly ferocious under the moonlight. My heart rate suddenly increased. The pain from my previous life seemed to have crossed time and space and descended upon me. I originally wanted to pretend not to know him. But he saw through me. Finn grabbed my chin tightly, with such force that it seemed he wanted to crush me. He got straight to the point and said, "Gina. Stop pretending. You've been reborn too. Right?" My heart shook. And I didn't say anything for a moment. "Gina. You know everything. Right?" She gave a sinister smile. I struggled violently and stared at him fixedly. "Leo is the child of the Leo family. You're a shameless thief." "Huh. So what? The people of the Leo family already trust me completely. As long as you don't talk too much. Who will know? Besides, with just a flick of my finger, Leo and you will disappear from this world. It's as easy for me to crush you as to crush an ant. At that time. With no one to prove otherwise. Who will know all this? So I advise you not to talk nonsense." He gritted his teeth as he said the last few words. Of course. He wasn't as fearless as he claimed. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come to find me in such a hurry. I sneered. "Do you think you're the only one who knows how to leave a backup plan? Am I stupid? Just come at me. I've died once already. What do I have to be afraid of? If you dare to touch a hair on me or Leo, I promise that the evidence will appear on the front page of the newspaper tomorrow. And everyone will know that you're a shameless imposter. With the means of the Leo family, it's not certain who will end up worse off. In fact, I hadn't had time to do all this. It was all just made up by me to intimidate him. Finn stared at me intently, trying to judge the truth of my words. Suddenly, he laughed. The force in Finn's hand relaxed, and he stroked my lips. His gaze was like the sticky tongue of a poisonous snake, sweeping over my face. Gina, don't be like this. I was wrong. We are the closest people in the world. I shouldn't have said such harsh words to you. I'm really too scared. Do you understand? As he spoke, he started crying. Who's close to you? I rolled my eyes. Who are you trying to deceive? You're just acting. Gina, I know I was wrong. Before, I didn't see my own heart clearly and was deceived by Molly's sweet words. In fact, I've always liked you. The moment I knew that Molly killed you and our child, I was in so much pain that I wished I could die. Now that we've been reborn, can we give our child a chance to be reborn too? Hearing his shameless words, I was almost furious. He still wanted me to jump into the fire and use the child to shut me up. It's hard to imagine that such words could come out of a living person's mouth. Just thinking that I had been in a relationship with such a scumbag in my previous life made me feel as sick as if I had eaten a ton of excrement. This made me feel even worse than having a criminal record. I don't know where I got the strength, but I pushed him away directly and shouted sharply, "Don't to hell. You idiot. Reborn. Reborn my ass. You give birth to the child yourself. I curse you to have 108 children." I took off my high heels and swung them at his head with all my might. The high heels left an afterimage as I swung them. If that guy hadn't run away quickly, I would have been able to get a government job and live off the state for the rest of my life. The turning point came on a peaceful afternoon. That day, I was peeling fruit for Leo. Well, I couldn't actually peel it. It was Leo who was peeling the fruit for me. And I was still occupying half of his bed. Suddenly, a noble lady walked into the ward and started crying when she saw Leo. Behind her was a man. And at a glance, he looked 7/10 like Leo. I couldn't help but marvel at the power of genes. "Xiao Yi, you've suffered, son. You've had a hard time all these years. I'm your mother." Leo's mother's voice was trembling. Leo also realized at this moment that his biological parents had come to find him. He instinctively looked at me. And I smiled and congratulated him. Then I closed the door and quietly stepped out to let them recognize each other. It turned out that when Leo was seeking investment for his startup, his business idea was favored by the Leo family. Coincidentally, his resume was seen by Leo's uncle. Just based on his appearance, they were already quite sure. After a careful investigation, they found that the time when Leo came to my home was surprisingly consistent with the time when the youngest son of the Leo family, who was abducted by an Annie more than 10 years ago. They bribed the hospital to conduct a DNA test using blood. Sure enough, Leo was the abducted child of the Leo family. Finn came striding over angrily from a distance, shouting his lungs out, "I'm the child of the Leo family. I'm the young master of the Leo family. I am." Before he could get close, he was pinned down by the bodyguards. His eyes were wide with rage as he stared at the hospital room. The knife in his pocket fell to the ground with a thud. He was taken away for disposal. The Leo family would never allow such a person, who was an imposter and harbored malicious intentions, to stay by their side. I was sincerely happy for Leo. He finally had his own parents and could embark on a glorious life journey. You see, my brother is always so amazing. He didn't rely on others but made his own life get on the right track through his own efforts. As I smiled, tears streamed down my face. Leo was taken back to the Leo family. He wanted to be with me, but I persuaded him not to. I still lived in the small rented room. I said I was too busy and had to write my graduation thesis at school. I told him that I would go to see him after I finished this busy period. He said I was lying. I pretended to be relaxed. "Brother, don't you know how clingy I am to you? I'm really too busy to spare the time. Don't you know that I'm a poor student? I have to spend more time than others to have a chance of graduating smoothly. I won't talk anymore. Bye." As soon as I hung up the phone, Tears couldn't stop streaming down my face. If I stayed for one more second, I would have revealed the truth. I packed my luggage while crying. In the afternoon, I went to the appointment with Leo's mother as scheduled. She was dignified and refined, and her voice was as gentle as water. She was nothing like the aggressive people portrayed in TV dramas. She thanked my family for taking care of Leo all these years. I should be the one thanking Leo. After my parents passed away, he took the initiative to take on the responsibility of taking care of me. Even though I was so naughty, he never complained. He did the hardest work to support my studies. My eyes were sore and painful. It's what we should do. The Leo family had already investigated everything about Leo's experiences over the years. In Leo's mother's words, there was full of a mother's heartache and regret for her son's experiences. How could she not feel heartbroken? If it weren't for me being a burden, Leo would be even more dazzling than he is now. He should have been studying at a top university, setting an example for many people. Instead of dropping out of high school and being gossiped about, Leo's mother wanted to repay my kindness. Before she could ask me what conditions I wanted, I interrupted her. I don't want anything. Leo's mother paused with the coffee cup in her hand, as if considering how difficult time might be to deal with. I said calmly, I don't want money. And I won't pester Leo. I have only one condition. Leo's mother was surprised. In the future, anyone can be Leo's wife. But it must never be Molly. It wasn't just because she killed me in the previous life. But more importantly, she had a bad character. I placed the evidence I had collected during this period in front of Leo's mother. She had an unchaste private life. When she was at school, she bullied her classmates, causing one of them to jump off a building. She also drove under the influence and killed someone in a car accident. One after another. These things were all challenging the bottom line of the law. Such a person was not worthy of being Leo's wife. Of course, I wasn't worthy either. In the previous life, I treated him so badly. I should be grateful that he didn't hate me. In this life, it was already a great fortune that I didn't hold him back and allowed him to have a complete family. It would be too shameless of me to selfishly expect his love and make him sacrifice his whole life for me. When Leo's mother saw this evidence, she was so shocked that she couldn't say a word for a moment. Gina, I then fulfilled my obsession. Auntie knows that you're doing this for Leo's good. Auntie promises you. You will always be Leo's sister. If you have any difficulties in the future, you can come to Auntie. Her words that I would always be Leo's sister put a perfect end to the relationship between Leo and me. Yes, I should be more than happy to have such a rich and amazing brother. Why am I crying? But the tears just wouldn't listen and rolled down my face in big drops. They were like beads with a broken string. I'm so reluctant to part with Leo. He's so good that he makes me feel inferior. I spent the last night in the small rented room hugging Leo's clothes. The next day, I dragged my suitcase to the airport and bid farewell to Leo completely. Leo, in this life, you have to live a long and happy life. Don't try to commit suicide easily for someone who isn't worth it. Just a second before I was about to board the plane, I heard Leo's voice. Gina. Leo stood in the crowd on crutches. His face as dark as ink, and his eyes red. As soon as I was about to pull my suitcase and leave, I heard the sound of him being knocked down and kneeling on the ground. His leg wasn't fully recovered yet. What if he had a second fracture and became disabled? There wasn't a single person around to help him up. He was all alone. Just like when he was abducted at the age of 7 and had no home to go to. I closed my eyes, hesitated for a moment, and then ran over to help him up. But unexpectedly, instead of helping him up, I was pulled into his arms. He held me tightly in his arms, afraid that I would run away. Gina, I don't know, sorry. You don't want your brother anymore, do you? Is your brother going to be without a home again? His voice was trembling, and it broke my heart. I sniffled and smiled, saying, Brother, how could that be? I'm just going abroad for a trip. How could you be without a home? Your parents are waiting for you at home. He bit my neck and said loudly, But you're not there. A place without you isn't a home to me. It was the same for me. I had already lost my home a long time ago. It was Leo's presence that made me feel the warmth of home again. I clenched his clothes and couldn't say a word. My heart hurt more than my neck. You've been lying to me. You just want to abandon me, don't you? He was like a naughty child starved of love, refusing to let go of my hand, no matter what. Gina, don't leave, okay? Your brother can't live without you. You're your brother's whole world. There was a strong plea in his hoarse voice. I was about to miss the boarding time. So I pushed him away heartlessly. He didn't move an inch. I tore off my mask with my own hands and exposed my most vulnerable side to him. Do you know what kind of person I am? I'm selfish, ignorant, vain, whatever low sigh, and willing to do anything for money. I know. I know it all. I cried out with a sob. You don't know. You don't know anything. In the previous life, you were dragged down by me for a whole lifetime and died a miserable death because of me. Brother knows. Brother knows everything. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. He caressed me lovingly. And tears quietly rolled down his face. I was stunned. The words that brother didn't have the chance to tell you in person in the previous life, I want to tell you in the rest of my life. Gina, I love you. I love you as much as my life. I felt like I was hit by a huge surprise and couldn't think straight. Leo held my face and wiped away my tears. Unexpectedly, the more he wiped, the more tears there were. He kissed my burning eyes and brows and said he loved me over and over again. Don't cry. Don't cry. Brother's heart aches. I hugged his waist and cried bitterly in his arms. It turned out that no matter what I became, there was always someone who loved me regardless of everything. Because the pine and cypress trees will never let down the winter. The end. Extra chapter from the male lead's perspective. After learning the news of Gina's death in the previous life, I was completely devastated. I avenged her with my own hands. But I didn't feel the slightest pleasure of getting revenge. My heart was empty, as if it had been hollowed out. I had no vitality left. Everyone criticized her for being willful, vain, whatever low sigh, and promiscuous, and for getting pregnant by someone. The words "she deserved to die" maliciously judged her whole life. But no one blamed those damn scam companies for how many innocent girls they had deceived and how many girls' youth they had wasted. No one blamed those arrogant and violent rich second-generation people for playing with other people's feelings, getting girls pregnant, and then kicking them away without taking responsibility. No one wanted to know how much pain my Gina had endured when she was killed, who had killed her, and where her body was. No one understood that although my Gina was a willful and spoiled child, she also didn't want her brother to be so tired, and she did those things just to share some of the burden for her brother. They couldn't see anything, but they put all the blame on her and reveled in profiting from her misfortune. She just made the wrong choice. What was her fault? If there was anyone at fault, it was me. I was at fault for not having enough money to give her a comfortable environment, making her worry about both her studies and her livelihood. I was at fault for neglecting her growth in order to make money, which led to some of her bad habits. I was at fault for not teaching her how to judge people, making her trust others too easily. She should have been a happy child surrounded by love. And it was because of me that she suffered. I never blamed her. Nor did I hate her. I didn't feel ashamed of her either. On the contrary, I hated myself. I hated my own incompetence. I hated that I didn't even have the courage to tell her that I liked her. If there is an afterlife, I will definitely hold her hand firmly and tell her the love that has been buried in my heart. Gradually, the sea water engulfed all my consciousness. I saw my sister's bright smile again. Gina, wait a little slower. Brother is coming to accompany you. I was reborn. I was reborn on the day when my sister and I had a falling out. This time, I will hold her hand and walk on with her. Do you like pine and cypress trees? The pine and cypress trees will never let down the winter.